The airport was loud, not chaotic, but alive. Rolling suitcases, echoing announcements, people moving with purpose, some rushing, some waiting, some completely lost in their own world. And in the middle of all that noise, he walked in, Bruce Lee. No bodyguards, no attention, no sign that anything unusual was about to happen. Just a man, calm, focused, present. His steps were light, almost silent against the polished floor. But there was something about him, something people couldn't quite explain. Not fear, not fame, something else, something controlled. A businessman near the entrance glanced at him briefly, then looked again. Not because he recognized him, but because something felt different. Bruce moved through the crowd effortlessly. Not pushing, not avoiding, just flowing, like water finding its path. Every step placed exactly where it needed to be. Every movement intentional. An announcement echoed overhead. Final call for passengers. People rushed. Energy spiked. Tension rose, but none of it touched him. He kept walking, unbothered, unchanged, until— "Hey!" The voice cut through the noise sharply, loud, authoritative, and slightly aggressive. Bruce stopped, not suddenly, not startled, just stopped, then slowly turned. A security guard approached, tall, broad, heavy steps, the kind of man used to being obeyed, used to controlling situations, used to people moving when he spoke. "You can't go through here," the guard said firmly. Bruce looked at the path ahead, then back at the guard. "There's no restriction sign," he replied calmly. The guard frowned. That wasn't the response he expected. "Doesn't matter," he said. "I said you can't go." A few nearby people slowed down, not enough to gather, but enough to notice. Bruce didn't move, didn't argue, didn't react emotionally. He simply stood there, calm, balanced, aware. "I'm heading to my gate," he said. Same tone, same calmness, no challenge, but no submission either. And that's what triggered it. Because some people don't react well to calm, especially when they expect resistance. The guard stepped closer, invading space, trying to assert dominance. "I don't care where you're going," he said. "You need to turn around." The air changed, subtle, but noticeable. People were watching now, not openly, but enough. Bruce looked at him, really looked, not judging, not threatening, just observing, like he was studying something, and that made the guard uncomfortable. "Is there a problem?" Bruce asked quietly. That question, simple, neutral, but powerful, because it shifted everything. Now the guard had to explain, and he didn't like that. "You're the problem," he snapped. "A mistake, a small one, but important, because now it wasn't about rules anymore, it was personal." Bruce nodded slightly, understanding, not agreeing, just understanding. "I see," he said. Silence followed, heavy silence, the kind that builds pressure. The guard crossed his arms, trying to regain control. "Look," he said, voice tightening. "I'm not going to repeat myself." Bruce didn't respond. Didn't need to. That silence again. It was doing all the work. A woman nearby slowed her steps. A man pretended to check his phone, but didn't move. Everyone felt it now. Something was about to happen, and they couldn't look away. The guard stepped even closer, too close, close enough to push, and that's exactly what he did. A firm shove to Bruce's chest, not enough to injure, but enough to dominate, enough to say, "I'm in control," or at least that's what he thought, because the moment his hands made contact, everything changed. Bruce didn't move, not back, not sideways, not even a flinch. It was like pushing against something solid, something rooted, something that didn't react the way normal people do. The guard blinked, confused just for a second, but that second mattered, because confidence lives in certainty, and uncertainty kills it. Bruce looked down briefly at the guard's hand, then back up. "You're using force," he said calmly. No anger, no accusation, just a statement, and somehow that made it worse. The guard pulled his hand back slightly, not fully, just enough to reset. "To move people, you need force," he replied. Bruce shook his head slightly. "No," he said, "to move people, you need understanding." That line landed harder than any push, because it wasn't just disagreement, it was correction, and the guard felt it. The people around felt it, even if they didn't fully understand it. The tension rose again, higher this time, sharper, more focused. The guard clenched his jaw, trying to hold on to authority, trying not to lose control, but it was already slipping, because this situation was no longer simple, and the man standing in front of him was no longer just another passenger. The guard stepped forward again, this time with intention, with force, with something to prove, and the crowd, they leaned in, not physically, but mentally, because deep down everyone knew this moment was about to change everything. The shove was strong, deliberate, confident, the kind meant to end a situation instantly, but it didn't. Bruce Lee didn't step back, didn't stumble, didn't react the way the guard expected. It was like pushing against something that didn't respond to force at all. For a split second, nothing moved, and that created a crack, a tiny one, but enough, because the guard felt it, that brief moment where certainty disappears. He frowned, not in anger yet, in confusion. Then he pushed again, harder this time, more force, more intention. Still nothing. Bruce remained exactly where he was, balanced, relaxed, unshaken. The crowd felt the shift instantly. You couldn't see it clearly, but you could feel it. The guard wasn't in full control anymore, and that realization, it spread silently. "You think this is funny?" the guard snapped. Bruce shook his head slightly. "No," he said calmly, "I think this is unnecessary." That word, unnecessary, it hit differently, because now the guard wasn't just being resisted. He was being questioned, and people like him don't like that, especially in public, especially when people are watching. The guard stepped closer again, this time invading space completely. "You don't decide what's necessary," he said. "I do?" Bruce looked at him, calm as ever. "That's the problem," he replied quietly. The tension tightened, like a wire being pulled too far. Something was about to snap. The guard exhaled sharply, trying to hold it together, trying to stay in control. But control was already slipping. Not physically, mentally. "You're not listening," the guard said. "I am," Bruce replied, "but you're not understanding." Another line, another shift. The crowd was fully aware now. No one was walking past anymore. They weren't gathering openly, but they weren't leaving either. Everyone was locked into the moment, because something about this felt different. The guard's jaw tightened. "You think you're smart," he said. Bruce didn't respond. That silence again, heavy, intentional, and somehow more powerful than words. That's when the guard made his next move. A mistake. He reached out, not to push this time, but to grab. One hand on Bruce's shoulder, firm, controlling, trying to physically dominate the situation, trying to prove, "I can move you if I want." But the moment his hand settled, Bruce moved, not fast, not aggressive, just precise. A small turn of the body, a slight shift of weight, almost invisible but devastating in effect, because suddenly the guard wasn't holding him anymore. His grip lost structure. His balance shifted slightly forward, not enough to fall, but enough to lose control, and control was everything. The guard tried to tighten his grip, but something felt off, like he wasn't connected properly, like the position didn't give him power anymore. "What are you doing?" he snapped. Bruce looked at his hand calmly, then back at him. "Nothing," he said, and that was true because he wasn't using force, he was using position. The guard pulled his hand back quickly, resetting, trying to recover, trying to pretend nothing happened, but it was too late. People saw it, not clearly, but enough to question, enough to doubt, and doubt destroys authority faster than anything. The guard stepped forward again, now more aggressive, more emotional. "Stand still," he ordered. Bruce didn't move, didn't react, didn't resist. He was already still, but not in submission, in control. That difference was everything. The guard grabbed again, this time with both hands, one on the arm, one near the collar, tighter, stronger, more desperate, trying to force a reaction, trying to force movement, trying to win. But again, same result. Bruce didn't resist, didn't fight back. He simply moved with the force. A slight pivot, a small adjustment, and suddenly the guard's grip became useless. No leverage, no control, just contact, without power. "What the—" Before he could finish, Bruce's hand rose, calm, measured, precise. He touched the guard's wrist. Not a strike, not a hit, just a touch. But that touch changed everything. The guard's arm dropped slightly, not by choice, but like the strength wasn't fully there anymore. He tried to lift it again. It worked, but slower, less stable. Confusion hit him hard. "What did you do?" he demanded. Bruce lowered his hand, relaxed again. "You're tense," he said. "That makes you predictable." The words hit deeper this time, because now the guard wasn't just losing physically. He was being understood, and being understood means being exposed. The crowd felt it, that shift, that realization. This wasn't a normal confrontation. This wasn't about strength. This was something else, something they couldn't fully explain. The guard stepped back half a step, not fully retreating, but reassessing, trying to figure out what he was dealing with. "You think this is some kind of trick?" he asked. Bruce shook his head. "No tricks," he said, "just timing." Timing, another word, another layer, another thing the guard didn't fully understand, but felt, and that feeling? It was turning into frustration, into anger, into something dangerous. "Enough," the guard said. His voice changed, lower, heavier, more serious, no more testing, no more hesitation. He stepped forward again, fast, direct. This time, no grabbing, no pushing. His arm shot forward, a sharp, aggressive strike, not full force, but enough to end the situation, or at least that's what he believed, because the moment his arm moved, Bruce had already responded, not reacting, but moving before it even fully happened. A slight shift, a perfect angle, and the strike missed completely, clean, effortless, like it was never going to land. The guard's momentum carried forward, too far, too exposed, and in that exact moment, everything aligned. Bruce stepped in, just slightly, no tension, no hesitation. His hand moved, short distance, no wind-up, no warning, and then impact, a sharp, controlled strike to the chest, so fast most people didn't even see it clearly, so precise. It didn't need power, just timing. The guard's body reacted instantly. His breath vanished. His feet stumbled back. One step, two, 3. And then he froze, eyes wide, chest tight, mind blank. The crowd gasped, soft, but unified, because they felt it, that moment, that shift, that undeniable realization. This wasn't normal. Bruce lowered his hand slowly, back to calm, back to stillness, like nothing had happened. "You used too much," he said quietly. "I used enough." Silence, heavy, unavoidable. The guard stood there, trying to breathe, trying to think, trying to understand what just happened, but he couldn't, not yet, because what he just experienced didn't follow the rules he knew, and that's what made it dangerous, because now this wasn't just a confrontation, it was something deeper, something that was about to change him. Whether he wanted it or not, the impact had already happened, but the real moment was what came after. The guard stood frozen, breath shallow, chest tight, mind struggling to catch up, because what he just felt didn't match what he saw. There was no big swing, no dramatic movement, no visible power, and yet it hit harder than anything he expected. Bruce Lee stepped back slightly, not to create distance, but to remove pressure. Because for him, the moment was already finished, but for the guard, it had just begun. "What was that?" the guard said, voice uneven, not angry, not confident, just confused. Bruce looked at him calmly. "You moved first," he said. "I finished it." Simple, direct, but impossible to fully understand in that state. The guard straightened his posture, trying to regain control, trying to rebuild authority, but something inside him had shifted, something subtle but permanent. "You think this proves something?" he said. Bruce didn't answer immediately. He just watched him, studied him, like a teacher observing a student who doesn't realize he's learning. "It proves you're reacting," Bruce said finally, "not thinking." That line hit harder than the strike, because now this wasn't physical anymore, it was mental, and the guard felt exposed, completely exposed. "I am thinking," he snapped. "No," Bruce replied calmly, "you're defending your ego." Silence, heavy, sharp, unavoidable. The crowd felt it, that word, ego. It changed everything, because now this wasn't about rules, or authority, or control. It was about something deeper, something personal. The guard clenched his fists again, but this time there was hesitation, just a fraction, but enough, because hesitation kills aggression. "You don't know anything about me," he said. Bruce nodded slightly. "That's true," he replied, "but I know this moment." Another shift, another layer. The guard took a step forward again, but slower this time, more cautious, less certain, because now he wasn't just reacting, he was thinking, and thinking made him late. "You're making this complicated," the guard said. Bruce shook his head. "No," he said, "you're making it difficult." The difference? Subtle, but powerful. The guard exhaled sharply, trying to reset, trying to clear his mind, trying to take control back. But control doesn't come from force, and he was starting to feel that. "You're still in a restricted area," he said, trying to return to authority. Bruce looked around briefly, then back at him. "No," he said, "you're holding on to a reason. That line cut deep, because it was true. The situation had already moved beyond rules. Now it was about saving face, saving pride, and everyone there knew it." The guard looked around. People were watching, really watching now, not casually, not passively. They were engaged, focused, waiting, and that pressure? It was building. "You're not walking through here," the guard said again. But this time, it didn't sound strong. It sounded forced. Bruce took a slow step forward. Not aggressive, not challenging, just moving. The guard reacted instantly, stepping in front again, blocking the path. But this time, there was something different, less certainty, more tension. "You don't understand," the guard said. Bruce stopped again. Calm, still. "I understand more than you think," he replied. The guard shook his head, frustration rising again. "No, you don't," he said. "You're just standing there acting like you're in control." Bruce looked at him, then said something that changed everything. "I don't act in control." Pause. "I am." That line hit the entire space, not loud, not aggressive, but undeniable. The guard felt it, the crowd felt it, even the air felt different, because control was no longer a claim. It was visible, obvious, real. The guard's breathing changed again, faster, heavier, because now he wasn't just dealing with resistance, he was dealing with something he couldn't dominate, and that was frustrating him more than anything. "Then move me," the guard said suddenly. A challenge, direct, clear. "Move me if you're in control." The crowd reacted internally. That was it. The moment. The escalation. Bruce didn't move immediately, didn't accept the challenge the way most would. Instead, he stepped closer, slowly, closing the distance, not aggressively, but intentionally. Now they were face to face, close enough to feel breath, close enough to feel presence. Bruce raised his hand, slowly, no tension, no speed, just movement. The guard didn't react, didn't block, didn't stop him, because it didn't feel like an attack. Bruce placed his hand lightly on the guard's shoulder. No force, just contact. "Relax," he said quietly. The guard frowned. "I am relaxed," he replied. Bruce shook his head slightly. "No," he said, "you're resisting." Before the guard could respond, Bruce moved, a small shift, a slight turn, a subtle redirection of pressure, and suddenly the guard stepped, not by choice, not intentionally. His body just moved, one step to the side, clean, effortless, like he had been guided there. The path opened, clear, simple, done. The guard froze, again, but this time not from impact, from realization, because he didn't feel pushed, didn't feel forced, he just moved. "What did you do?" he asked quietly. Bruce lowered his hand. "Nothing," he said. "You moved yourself." The crowd reacted, not loudly, but deeply, because they saw it, they felt it. That wasn't strength, that wasn't speed, that was something else entirely, something they couldn't explain, but couldn't ignore. The guard looked at the open path, then back at Bruce, then at his own feet, trying to understand how he got there. But there was no answer he could grasp, because what just happened was beyond his current understanding. Bruce stepped forward, past him, no rush, no drama, just movement. But then he stopped, turned slightly, and said one last thing. "When you stop fighting yourself, you'll stop losing control." And with that, he continued walking, leaving the guard behind. Not defeated, but changed. And the crowd? They didn't follow, didn't speak, didn't interrupt, because they knew. They had just witnessed something rare, something real, something they wouldn't forget. And for the guard, that moment was far from over. The path was clear, completely open, no resistance, no obstruction, no reason to stop. And yet, Bruce Lee paused, just for a moment, not because he needed to, but because something behind him hadn't settled yet. The guard stood still, exactly where he had been moved, feet planted, mind racing, ego collapsing, because what just happened didn't make sense. He wasn't pushed, he wasn't overpowered, he wasn't even forced, he just moved. And that realization, it hit harder than any strike. Wait. The word came out before he could stop it. Not loud, not aggressive, but urgent. Bruce stopped walking, slowly turned. No frustration, no impatience, just attention. The guard stepped forward. This time, different. No aggression, no dominance, just confusion, mixed with something new. What was that? He asked. Not demanding, not challenging, asking. Bruce looked at him, studied him for a second, then said, "You let go." The guard frowned. "I didn't let go of anything." Bruce tilted his head slightly. "You let go of control," he replied. Silence, because now... The guard was listening, actually listening, not reacting, not defending, trying to understand. "That doesn't make sense," he said. Bruce nodded. "It doesn't. Yet." That word, yet. It gave space. It gave time. It gave possibility. The guard exhaled slowly, trying to process everything. "You're saying I moved myself?" he asked. Bruce didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped closer again. Calm, measured, controlled. "Stand still," Bruce said. The guard did. Not because he was ordered to, but because he wanted to understand. Bruce raised his hand again, placed it lightly on the guard's arm. No force, no pressure, just contact. "Don't resist," Bruce said quietly. The guard nodded, trying to follow, trying to do it right. Bruce moved slightly, a small shift, a gentle redirection, and again the guard stepped, clean, effortless, natural, like it was the easiest thing in the world. The guard looked down instantly, eyes wide. "How?" he whispered. Bruce removed his hand. "Because you stopped fighting," he said. The guard looked back up, still trying to piece it together. "But I didn't feel anything," he said. Bruce smiled faintly. "That's the point." That answer was heavier than everything before, because now... The guard realized something important. He had always depended on force to understand movement, but this had no force, and yet it worked better. The crowd had gone completely silent again. People who were about to leave stayed. People who weren't even involved were now watching closely, because what was happening now was no longer a confrontation. It was a lesson, and everyone felt it. The guard stepped back slightly, looking at his own body, his own stance, his own balance. "For years," he said slowly, "I've been trained to control people." Bruce nodded. "And now?" he asked. The guard paused, then said something honest. "I don't think I understand control at all." That moment was bigger than anything before, because this time there was no ego, no defense, just truth. Bruce looked at him with calm approval. "Good," he said. The guard frowned slightly. "Good?" Bruce nodded. "Because now you can learn." That line changed everything, because it turned the situation from failure into opportunity. The guard let out a slow breath. Something inside him relaxed, not fully, but enough. "So what should I do?" he asked. A question, real, open, ready. Bruce looked around briefly, at the crowd, at the space, at the moment, then back at him. "First," he said, "stop trying to win." The guard listened carefully. "Second," Bruce continued, "start trying to understand." Simple, clear, but deep, because those two things change everything. The guard nodded slowly, absorbing it, not fully understanding yet, but accepting it. Bruce stepped back slightly, creating space again. "You're strong," he said, "but you're using it the wrong way." The guard didn't argue, didn't defend, just listened. "Strength without control," Bruce continued, "is just noise." That line echoed, not just for the guard, for everyone, because it applied to more than just fighting. It applied to everything. The guard looked down again, then back up. "What about you?" he asked. "How did you learn this?" Bruce paused, just for a second, then said, "I stopped trying to be strong." The guard blinked, confused again. "That doesn't make sense," he said. Bruce smiled slightly. "It will," he replied. Another yet moment, another layer, another step. An announcement echoed overhead again. Final boarding call. Reality returned. Time moved again. People shifted. But the moment still held its weight. Bruce turned toward the gate, ready to leave. But before he walked, the guard spoke one last time. "Will I ever be able to do that?" A real question. No ego, no challenge, just hope. Bruce looked at him, then said quietly, "When you stop forcing it." And with that, he walked away. No more explanation, no more demonstration, because the lesson had already been given. The guard stood there, watching him go, not as an opponent, not as a problem, but as something else entirely, a reference point, a moment of change, something he would never forget. The crowd slowly began to move again. Conversation started, energy returned, but something remained, something subtle, something powerful, because everyone there knew they didn't just witness a moment. They witnessed a shift, and for the guard, that shift was only the beginning. The airport had gone completely silent. Not the normal kind of silence. This was different. This was the kind of silence that happens when people realize they just witnessed something unreal. The security guard stood frozen, his hand still slightly raised from where he had grabbed Bruce Lee, but now he wasn't looking at Bruce Lee like before. Not with authority, not with confidence. Now he was looking at him with uncertainty. Bruce Lee didn't move, didn't react, didn't even change his expression. He simply stood there, calm, relaxed, as if nothing had happened, but everyone around could feel it. That one tiny movement, that 1 second, had changed everything. A man from the crowd whispered, "Did you see that?" Another replied, "He didn't even try." Someone else said, "That wasn't normal. No one moves like that." The guard cleared his throat, trying to regain control. You can't just walk through like that," he said, but his voice wasn't the same anymore. There was hesitation now. Bruce Lee finally looked at him, not aggressively, not angrily, just directly. "You grabbed me," Bruce said calmly. No emotion, just a fact. The guard swallowed. For a second, it looked like he might say something back, but he didn't, because deep down, he knew. That moment, that one instant, had already shown him everything he needed to know. Bruce Lee slowly adjusted his jacket, still completely composed. "If you have a job to do," he continued calmly, "do it properly. No insult, no disrespect." But somehow, it hit harder than anything aggressive could have. A few people in the crowd nodded quietly, because they understood exactly what he meant. The tension didn't explode. There was no fight, no dramatic ending, and that's what made it even more powerful. The guard stepped back. Not forced, not pushed. He just stepped back, gave space, without saying a word. And that's when something even more unexpected happened. Instead of walking away immediately, Bruce Lee paused just for a moment. Then he slightly bowed his head. Not submission, respect. The guard looked confused for a second. Then, almost instinctively, he nodded back. That was it. No punches, no shouting, no chaos, just understanding. Bruce Lee then walked forward, through the airport. No one stopped him. No one even tried. People parted naturally, like they weren't even thinking about it. They just moved. A young man in the crowd whispered, "That's real power." Another replied, "He didn't have to prove anything." And that was the truth. Bruce Lee didn't win because he fought. He didn't win because he was stronger. He won because he never needed to fight in the first place. As he disappeared into the terminal, the moment stayed behind, burned into the memory of everyone who saw it. Years later, some of those people would still talk about it, not as a fight, but as a lesson that most people never understand. Power isn't loud, it isn't aggressive, it doesn't need to prove itself. Real power is control. And in that airport, for just a few seconds, everyone saw exactly what that looks like.